From LA to Piscataway, you've come to the right place to talk all things Big Ten. Welcome to Big Ten Ted Live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome in to Big Ten Ted Live on a Friday night. Did anything happen today? Was there any news that happened today? Of course there was. We're going to talk about it. I've got my segment with Spencer on Sports, Spencer Wagon, weekly segment I do on 1600 ESPN out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That is coming up at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central in about 15, 16, 17 minutes or so. So we're going to be talking some matchups within the Big Ten. I'm sure we're going to be talking some Michigan at that point as well, and the latest developments with this whole Connor Stallions sign stealing investigation. There is another name that you should know, and we are going to talk about it. So I kind of want to set the table for that discussion that we're going to have with Spencer here in just a little bit. And of course, I want to have that discussion with you guys as well. What you think of all of this going on right now, because the walls are kind of closing in right now on the Michigan Wolverines. So the big news of the day here today was the termination of linebackers coach Chris Partridge. Chris Partridge, according to texts from Connor Stallions that we learned about weeks ago, a month or so ago, was very close to Connor Stallions. Connor said he kind of made buddies with some coaches on this coaching staff. There were two that he named specifically, CP, talking about Chris Partridge, and also talking about Jay Harbaugh in that. We might come back to that in just a little bit. But Chris Partridge was fired. At first, there was no explanation from the University of Michigan. But as we continued to receive reports today from folks like Ross Dellinger and Pete Thamel, some of the puzzle pieces are kind of coming together just a little bit. So I want to cover first the first article I have here from Ross Dellinger. And this kind of starts to uncover some things that we learned today. And that actually we found out yesterday, right? Yesterday, the big news was that Michigan they were going to accept the 3-game suspension that was put forth by the Big Ten Conference. It was kind of a big flip, kind of a 180 type of flip of what we've been seeing. There was a lot of pushback from Michigan, but then all of a sudden they said, okay, we'll accept. It sounded like the Big Ten was going to end their investigation, depending on who you ask. Some people said, yes, that's going to happen going forward. Some people say no, but the Big Ten has said we're going to work with the NCAA going forward. All right, let's dive into this article here first from Ross Dellinger. The NCAA presented Michigan with new evidence this week, including that a Michigan booster may have at least partially funded Connor Stallions' advanced scouting operation, and an assistant coach allegedly participated in the destruction of evidence on a computer after the scandal broke, industry sources tell Yahoo Sports. The school also announced that linebackers coach Chris Partridge has been relieved of his duties as a member of the Michigan football coaching staff. Multiple sources say that Partridge is not alleged at this time of knowing about the advanced scouting by Stallions. I want to stop right there for just a minute, because Chris Partridge coached at Michigan from 2015 to 2019. I think he was at Ole Miss before this past year, and then he came back to Michigan for this season. All right, continuing on. But this article is saying, and the reporting is saying, that Partridge acted after the fact to cover up the evidence. Sources tell Yahoo Sports also that a booster named in the NCAA report as Uncle T helped fund the alleged scheme, giving Stallions thousands of dollars for expenses. That's been one thing that's really been talked about. Okay, Connor Stallions, you're working on a $50,000 a year salary. How did you get all this money to pay the people, to go out to all these venues, to travel and all that stuff? How'd you get that money to fund that? Right here, it's good old Uncle T, and we'll get into what the T in Uncle T might stand for here in just a little bit. And then, of course, the article goes on to really tell more background detail of the Jim Harbaugh situation and Connor Stallions resigning from the program kind of earlier this month. Just all of that was also covered in this article by Ross Dellinger. Of course, the big Michigan and Ohio State game coming up as well. So the big news was the termination of the linebackers coach in this one today. That was the big news that really came down today. The big shoe to drop, so to speak, after last week's news. And then I want to check out this tweet here from Pete Thamel. You kind of check the one that's quoted there. Per an ESPN source, this is the specific language Michigan used. I'm actually going to click on it here. Michigan used to explain Chris Partridge's firing. Quote, as we discussed today, the university has received evidence that you have failed to abide by the university directive not to discuss an ongoing NCAA investigation with anyone associated with the Michigan football program or others. As a result, it has been determined that you have failed to satisfactorily perform your duties. And then if I go back to the tweet was quoted by Pete, kind of giving a little bit of context per an ESPN source, this passage from Michigan refers to Partridge's conversations within the program, including staff and players. Staff members are directed by the school and NCAA to not discuss the investigation. Is that Pete Thamel covering this tracks? Did Chris Partridge leak some information to the press? Did he leak some information to Pete Thamel and all of the more information that's coming out? Or did he indeed talk to someone within the program, and did they leak out the information, and then maybe he tried to cover his tracks by destroying the computer that some information was on? There's still a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of theories going out there right now, but still a lot to uncover, a lot of unknowns. But this is a fairly big deal. This is a fairly big conversation and a fairly big story that really came out today, the firing of this coach. And it's connected because Connor Stallions had at the very least, a good relationship with this assistant coach. So we talked about the boosters. We talked about Uncle T. Some folks online did some digging. They did some digging, and they found that guy right there. They found Tim Smith. Tim Smith. Who is Tim Smith? We'll get into that here in just a little bit. This was a follow-up article from Ross Dellinger. So folks found out that Tim Smith was a pretty big part of Michigan's NIL collective. And some folks were kind of tying the dots. There's some screenshots from message boards out there. I invite you to go look at them because they're very interesting right now. Right now, they're screenshots. We're trying to connect some of these puzzle pieces together, trying to connect some of these dots, but it's pretty crazy what's going on right now. I'm trying to give you all of this information right now before I start my segment with Spencer at 6 o'clock Eastern. But man, this is a lot to even as the hours went by today, and I'm sure you guys were following that as it kind of came out today. But holy crap. All right. Michigan Athletics Director Tim Smith denies his involvement in the NCAA's investigation into the university's advanced scouting scheme and believes that those in power are searching for a scapegoat to blame, he tells Yahoo Sports. Smith is a Michigan alumni and a CEO of a Detroit-based engineering solutions company. And he said fans and associates are identifying him as the Michigan booster who allegedly helped fund former staff member Connor Stallions' in-person scouting and sign-stealing scheme. It's kind of a tough one to say. Yahoo Sports reported earlier Friday that evidence from the NCAA's investigation presented this week refers to athletics donor, Uncle T, as having partially funded Stallions' venture. Here's what he said. I can give you good news, Smith said during a 30-minute phone call with Yahoo Sports. I don't recognize being known as Uncle T, he said, and I will refute that myself. I never funded Connor. To say I knew him is perhaps overstating it. I said hi to him. I've never spoken to him since he left Michigan to make sure that that man is okay. Let me reread that. I've spoken to him more since he left Michigan to make sure this man is okay. So he tells Yahoo Sports that To say I knew him is perhaps overstating. It says, yeah, he's a guy. I knew him, might have said hi. But then after all of this stuff goes down with Connor, he's contacting more. He's seeing if he's okay. Those two, do they contradict each other? Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. All right, let's move on. Let's keep going. Smith is being targeted as the fall guy, he says in the NCAA's probe. Both of them are being thrown under the bus, he said. On Friday morning, for instance, officials from the school's NIL collective, the Champion Circles, dismissed Smith as a member. His page was wiped, he tells Yahoo Sports. He received the notification in text form saying they didn't have the canonas. They didn't have the grapefruits. To even call me over there. So here's kind of a big deal throughout all of this. Here's what Tim Smith says. Smith has spoken to Stallions multiple times since he resigned from the university after news of the scheme emerged. Smith said that the two are not close and that he knew him, quote, as well as any other staff person in the university's program. Stallions self-funded the sign-stealing effort by selling a home for more than $100,000. Interesting. Smith said Stallions told him. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. So there is some information in here that seems to go, it's going one way, but it's also going the other way with Tim Smith. And then he kind of goes on to kind of talk about all of these other things. There's a picture, a board member of this collective and all of this stuff happening right now. So it's crazy. We're going to get to our segment here with Spencer in 5 minutes. His producer should be calling in here shortly. But I want to go over some other stuff. I want to talk about this a little bit more, because there are some things we got to keep an eye on going forward. I honestly believe, like I've said this many times on this channel, Michigan is the Big Ten's best chance to win a national championship this season. I don't think that's creating any controversy. Zero controversy. But, and there's always a but I believe Tony Petitti is putting on a hat, he's putting on a shirt, a jersey, whatever in his office that is scarlet and that is gray. I honestly believe that. Because if Michigan continues to win, they beat Ohio State, they win the Big Ten championship game, they get to the CFP, the focus is all, because you have a lot of people right now at a certain four-letter network that is the same network that is going to be broadcasting the college football playoff. You have folks on there saying that national championship would not be legitimate. They should be banned from the college football playoff. That is all that they are going to talk about if Michigan gets into the college football playoff. If Ohio State gets into the college football playoff, hopefully we'll be talking about Georgia's defense against Marvin Harrison Jr. or whatever it would be at that certain point in time. I think the walls are closing in on Michigan with all this deal. I've seen a lot of people. I try to read through a lot of reaction with a lot of people, and I think some Michigan fans, maybe kind of like the administration a little bit, maybe they're starting to see what is happening and what's coming down the line here a little bit. We heard the comment earlier about America's team. Jim Harbaugh saying that this is America's team from the adversity. It's very difficult for me to look at this team right now at Michigan and feel sorry for them. It's hard for me to feel for them like maybe Jim Harbaugh and others want that feeling to be. I just can't do that. I can't do that with everything that's going on, considering all of these things that have been happening at the University of Michigan. All right, I'm going to get to some comments here before we get the call in from Spencer. We are going to be talking some Week 12 football in my segment here with Spencer. So we'll get to that. But first, let's get to some comments here very quickly. Keith Chambers chiming in. This stealing sign scandal out of control. There seems to be no end to the articles, the content, and the drama surrounding it. The drama, I think, is the key to that specific comment, because that's all people want to talk about. It's taking away from Michigan's fantastic season. I saw Rich Eisen talked about it on his show. He says this is the best team since 1997. You throw sign stealings. You just look on the field. You look between the end zones. I agree with that. I think another Michigan team that you could throw in there was, 2006? Mike Hart, Chad Henne, that type of team in there. Remember that 1 versus 2 matchup with Ohio State at the end of the year, a game of the century there in the mid-2000s. Maybe you could throw that one in there, but I think this team is better than that team. It's the best team since 1997, right? That Charles Woodson team. I believe Brian Greasy was the quarterback for the Wolverines that shared a national championship with the Nebraska Cornhuskers in that year as well. So maybe it appears that they have maybe gained an advantage on the field through recruiting with this type of situation. So I know you can talk about that, but in terms of on the field, this is a fantastic Michigan football team. I kind of feel bad in the preseason that I picked against them because I was thinking, am I really going to pick against Michigan? That was kind of a thought that I had in the preseason is, am I going to seriously pick against the Wolverines? Preseason, I picked Penn State to beat them at home. Obviously, that didn't happen. We saw that happen last week, but it's just where we stand right now. Right now. Here's Dallas, Big Ten Ted Champions Club member, Trojan fan. Here's an idea for dealing with sign stealing. Huddle up and run the play call like they did in the old days. I remember when I played youth football, we had the wristband. I was backup quarterback in 6th grade. We had the wristband. They'd come over, someone would sub in, right? There'd be a sub every play, or they'd run to the sidelines, right? They'd come in every play. Hey, play 55. Hey, play 42, right? But there's a lot of, I think the advent of sign stealing has been magnified because of more up-tempo offenses. You don't have time to go to the sidelines and get a play call, right? That's quite the decades ago, as Dallas kind of mentions it here as well. But it can be solved very easily. It can be solved with an IFB, with a speaker within the helmet on both the quarterback and then a defensive player like they do in the NFL. I think they have the green dot still on the back of the helmet. So that's a very easy solution to this going forward. So let's make that happen. I think that's one thing that I want to come out of this. Is usually when we have problems happen, let's not just talk about it. Let's try to find a solution. And I think the solution would be to have that communication between players on the field as well as some other folks over there. So I think that could be very beneficial kind of going on down the road. Our guy going for gold, not able to make it in today for the whole show, but thanks for checking in here for just a little bit. Here's Erica Goldberg, our resident Hawkeye fan, agreeing there with Keith. Some of the Michigan fans who've acted like drama queens and kings are looking pretty foolish. I said that in my video, was that yesterday, where, boy, it's just a lot of, they were really, really hyped up, pushing back, war, just everybody really mad, and even from the administration. Right, fans will be fans. Fan is short for fanatic. Easy for me to say. We've heard that on certain times, but even at the administrative level, with their president, with the athletic director, all these things that have been said, kind of backtracking it here just a little bit on the Michigan side of things. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all unfolds going forward. We're going to be talking some football here pretty soon as well. And Gerald stating the obvious here for a lot of us in Big Ten country. Not many care for Paul Feinbaum. And it doesn't matter to me what he says. If he doesn't think a Michigan national championship is legitimate, great. We don't determine national championships on the PF poll, on the Paul Feinbaum poll. We determine them on the field in the college football playoff over there as well. So kind of waiting on things here to get our segment in for the show, waiting for the producer to call. But in the meantime, we'll take some comments here and try to more from Keith. I'm a resident UW Huskies fan. Welcome to this conference. Welcome to the B1G. Welcome to the Big Ten. Just getting ready to embrace the Big Ten and all of its lumps/new traditions. So when you think about this for Tony Petitti, new commissioner, you got 4 new schools coming into the conference. You kind of want to make a good impression, don't you? Right? If this thing happens in the future, you want to set the tone and set the precedent for possibly incoming members and say, this is not going to fly. It's not going to fly. So we'll see what happens going forward throughout all this. But welcome to Washington. Boy, the Washington Huskies are they're right there, right? I can't remember if I said it on this stream. I've been saying a lot of stuff today, and there's been a lot going on, so bear with me. But when I look at Washington, they've got a great chance. I believe the best case scenario for the Big Ten right now for the postseason is for Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship, and have like a Ohio State versus an Oregon/Washington national championship. All right, we got producer calling in, so we'll hold that thought. Hello, it's Ted.
Hi, this is Isaac from 1600 ESPN. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm good. Spencer's just about ready for you if you're all set.
I'm all set.
Awesome.
So getting ready for our segment here, talking some football. I'm sure we'll mention Michigan, so we'll get into that as well.
He believes even bad football can be good. You're listening to Spencer on Sports on 1600 ESPN.
Indeed, you are 5:04 here on a Friday evening. Happy weekend. You've made it to the end of another week here in eastern Iowa. Kicking off drive time driven by Linder Tire. LinderTire.com. 3 locations for your convenience. Iowa City, North Liberty, and Grinnell, open and ready to help you with your car, truck, or van. Find out more about them on our website, kgymradio.com. Get to some NFL talk coming up here in about 25 minutes. Want to pass along, speaking of drive time, the traffic alert we told you about a few moments ago in case you're just heading out and your travels take you normally down Blair's Ferry Road, especially the eastern portion of Blair's Ferry Road. Cedar Rapids police saying that traffic on Blair's Ferry currently blocked in both directions from Council Street to Center Point Road because a gas line was struck and is being repaired. Police saying to use Collins Road or Boyson Road to travel east to west. Got some folks texting in as well saying both those roads very backed up because of the traffic being diverted. But keep that in mind if you are headed in that direction here on a Friday evening. 319-366-1600 as we bring you plenty of football talk here in the final hour of the show. Let's not keep our next guest waiting. It is our good friend Ted LaRue, Big Ten Ted. He joins us every week around this time to talk all things Big Ten football. Ted, good to talk to you. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. Did anything happen today?
Joe Burrow. No.
No.
Well, Joe Burrow technically was at Ohio State, though, so we could go down that road. But we're going to talk about all the games this week here in just a bit. But this Michigan thing, it started yesterday, really, with the removal of the lawsuit, coming to an agreement that Jim Harbaugh would, stick with the 3-game suspension, not going to coach the final 3 regular season games. The Big Ten closing an investigation, quote unquote, in exchange for that agreement. And now linebackers coach getting fired. Lots of reports coming out. Catch me up, Ted. My head is spinning, I feel like, every time I talk about this Michigan story.
Oh my gosh, it just keeps going down the rabbit hole as we continue to kind of go through this thing. So there's a lot to unpack for today. So the position coach gets fired, right? That kind of came out. At the time, there wasn't really an explanation for the position coach getting fired. But then you see reports kind of come down from Ross Dellinger and Pete Thamel. And here's kind of what we know, at least from today. So it's being reported that this linebackers coach, Chris Partridge, apparently covered up some evidence, possibly destroying computers where some evidence was on. And then we see, I promise this wasn't me, Spencer, but you've got Uncle T, right? Or apparently some folks calling Uncle T. Apparently he funded this scouting operation, apparently a booster funding this scouting operation. So then the internet sleuths get on there and they start to dig up some stuff and they find this guy named Tim Smith. So Who is Tim Smith? Tim Smith was on the board of the Michigan's NIL collective, the Champions Circle. His profile was wiped today. It was wiped off the site. He responded. He had a 30-minute phone call with Yahoo Sports, and he said they notified him by text that he was off the board. They didn't want this negative press within this as well. So there's a lot swirling right now, but in terms of the fired position coach, Chris Partridge, who, if you rewind 3 weeks, if you rewind a month, there was a series of texts that Connor Stallions had that were reported in one of these articles. He says he was close to a lot of coaches, but 2 coaches in particular. CP, which was Chris Partridge, and also Jay Harbaugh. So these guys were apparently close, apparently had a good relationship, and this thing kind of continues to spiral downward from Michigan. And it just so happens one day after, like you said, that they accepted the 3-game suspension, and their administration really cooled off because they were really aggressive and they were really pushing hard with pushing back at a possible court hearing on Friday. But Jim Harbaugh is not going to coach the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because on Monday, Ted, we heard Jim Harbaugh say, I want due process. I want my day in court. Back in my day, it was you're innocent until proven guilty, and we all know that that is still the case, no matter what Jim Harbaugh, will tell you. This changed quickly, and there's still more layers to this onion, layers to this Michigan sandwich, if you will, layer cake. I don't know, whatever food reference you want to use for it or metaphor you want to use for it. There's still many layers to this, and I still don't think we're anywhere close to being at the bottom of any of this, right?
No. There's more to come, and the reporters, the Dellingers, and the Thamels of the world have said as much. I'm very curious to see what's going to come out this Ohio State week, because it seemed like this was a pretty large layer of the onion that was peeled back. And if this is, it seems like, I heard somebody else say this today, and I agree with this. It seems like the NCAA is moving a lot quicker, right? They're notoriously slow in dealing with these things. It seems like they're a lot quicker. Now, Jim Harbaugh's comments about the NCAA in the offseason might expedite, right? Might kind of put this to the front of the line, so to speak. And they're also dealing with the timeline of the college football playoff upcoming as well. So there's a lot happening. I said yesterday in a commentary, I don't think the NCAA is going to do anything. And with the agreement that happened yesterday, apparently the Big Ten is going to shut down their investigation. In theory, that means no penalty the rest of the season for Michigan. But maybe this is a different NCAA. I know they've got a new president in there now. Who knows? But this is certainly something to keep an eye on as we continue. And I got to believe, I'll say this to finish this point up, you got to believe Tony Petitti is digging through his closet and finding that scarlet and gray cap, that scarlet and gray sweatshirt. Because if Michigan continues winning, they beat Ohio State, they win the Big Ten championship, all of the focus is going to be on Connor Stallions, Jim Harbaugh, sign stealing, etc., instead of offense, defense, special teams in the college football playoff.
Yeah, we are both in agreement on that. I mean, the commissioner of the conference is supposed to remain neutral and impartial and support all teams and all competitors and all competitions. But I think you put that out on Twitter or X earlier today, and yeah, I would agree with you on that. They are cheering hard for Ohio State to win in Ann Arbor next week. But Michigan does have to play a game this week, as we talked about last week with all the news that came out. Michigan's got Maryland. That's the big noon kickoff game. Michigan is a pretty sizable favorite, 19.5 last I saw over the Terps. Is this another pretty standard Michigan goes in and takes care of business and gets out of there and gets ready for the game, Ted, in your mind?
Sure seems that way. If they take care of business, if they play like we know they can play, right? Maryland is, they're an up and down team, and they've been down a lot, right? They had to squeak out a win against Nebraska. Otherwise, they would have been staring a 5-game losing streak in the face coming in to this football game. Look at Maryland's performance against Michigan last year. That was a one-possession game. Maryland played with the Wolverines in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But I look at this team right now for Maryland. I see a weak offensive line, right? They gave up 6 sacks to Northwestern. The following week, they gave up 6 sacks to Penn State. This is a Michigan pass rush that is really, really good. When this first thing about the linebackers coach came down, I'm like, he's not getting fired because of what's happening on the field. The linebackers are fine, right, at Michigan. And I think the Maryland offensive line, I think they're going to have a tough time with Michigan. Maryland just as a whole in the trenches, both on offense and defense, has really struggled. Talia Tagovailoa continues to be maybe the most inconsistent player in this conference. He can be up, he can be down. They got to simplify things for him. They got to get him into a rhythm early. He's been prone throughout his career. You guys at Iowa know, right? A couple of years ago, right? That big time turnover game, 4 or 5 interceptions. He can throw a lot of interceptions. He can turn the football over. You got to think Michigan is licking their chops. They just got to settle in, take care of business. If J.J. McCarthy throws 7-8 passes just like he did last week, I think that's just going to be just fine for the Wolverines.
The other program that's had some turmoil this week is Penn State firing their offensive coordinator, throwing him under the bus for James Franklin's failures to not win a big game last week, losing to Michigan at home. They've got Rutgers this week. Rutgers getting shut out in Iowa City, 22-0 last week. Not necessarily surprised that Iowa won that game. Maybe a little surprised they shut out Rutgers. I thought it would be a little bit closer matchup, but that's last week and this is this week. Does Rutgers give Penn State a game in Happy Valley, or is this a bounce back moment for James Franklin and crew?
Well, a bounce back is a very interesting term there right now when you look at this Penn State team. It's hard. It's hard because I don't think Rutgers has the offense to really get it done, especially going up against this Penn State defense. Like, in theory, you look at Penn State's offense going up against a solid Rutgers defense. In theory, maybe that matchup can do something. But then you look to the other side. I just have a hard time believing that Gavin Wimsatt can get in a rhythm against this really good Penn State defense. You know, Penn State, right, for you folks and the listeners in Iowa, I think there's some similarities between those teams where you've got a championship-level defense. But your offense just, man, you just wish you could have more out of them right now. It's just for Penn State, when I look around this team, Nick Singleton isn't making the explosive runs that he did last year. Katron Allen right now is their leading rusher. They've been good, no question about that. Because statistically, Allen and Singleton are top 10 in the conference in rushing yards this season. So that, it hasn't been bad, but I just don't know if they have the receivers on the outside that have been able to separate. I could maybe see this one being semi-close. Remember earlier in the season, look, I know this game's in Happy Valley. Remember earlier in the season, at a sleepy Evanston, Illinois in Northwestern, where that game was fairly close until the Nittany Lions blew it open in the mid-third quarter going into the fourth quarter. I could see somewhat similar, low-scoring, defensive battle early on, and then Penn State eventually pulls away.
Talking with Big Ten Ted, as we do every Friday here on 1600 ESPN. All right, Ted, let's come a little close to home here in Eastern Iowa. Hawkeyes need to win one game, one of their final two, to clinch their spot in Indy, the final trip to Indianapolis for the Big Ten West, as the West ceases to exist after this year. Big news today, or this week, I should say, not news that Iowa fans wanted, obviously, with Cooper DeJean going down with a season-ending injury. Let's start there, Ted. Your reaction to that news. I mean, obviously, it's an irreplaceable player, but Iowa's got to do their best to try and replace him. In your mind, does that injury change how you see the final two games for Iowa playing out, or is it still kind of the same, in your opinion, how things might play out for the Hawkeyes down the stretch?
Well, I'm going to take a jump into the Wayback Machine, and I'm going to take a jump into the Time Machine. Maybe not a place that Iowa fans want to go to. If you remember last year, now there's a little bit of a difference between these two, and I'll kind of get into that. Last year, right, playing Nebraska in the final game of the season, Cooper DeJean goes out mid-game. Now, I understand this happened earlier in the week, so there's a little bit of a difference there. Cooper DeJean goes out mid-game, and Nebraska starts to hit plays down the field, and Nebraska was able to hold off the Iowa Hawkeyes in the final game of the season. I look at this game and look at the way Illinois is throwing the football. Brett Bielema says it's going to be Luke Altmaier. John Paddock is playing pretty darn good as well. This is a pass game that has found their rhythm at Illinois. Coming into this season, when they were trotting out Reggie Love and Josh McCray after they lost the great running back in Chase Brown, I said, This offense is going to need to open it up a little bit more. There was so much pressure on Luke Altmaier early. They found their run game in October where they really started to get it together. Caden Fagan, the freshman running back, I think that was the key for Illinois' offense because now you had a little bit of balance. Then once that pass game got going, Illinois really started to take off down the field. And that's a big key. Can Illinois move the football through the air against the Iowa Hawkeyes? Like I said, a little bit of a difference from the Nebraska game. That was mid-game. They've got some time to prepare, and they still got good defensive backs, right? The ball Hawkeyes are still back there. You still got Quinn Schulte. You still got Xavier Harris. You still got Sebastian Castro. Look, you still got good players back there, and now maybe Phil Parker can kind of adjust and kind of scheme some things up against this Illinois defense. But to me, that's the big question. That's the big question. I think Iowa needs to try to halt the balance. They need to try to really buck up against this run game and put a lot more pressure on Luke Altmaier, John Paddock, whoever it is, which might be a little bit odd to say considering how good their pass game is. But look at early in the season when Illinois was really having their struggles, they weren't able to run the football. They didn't have a balanced offense. So much pressure was put on Luke Altmaier, and eventually he kind of caved in a little bit. Iowa, maybe halt that run game, and that offensive line isn't great for Illinois either. Send your pass rushers and really hit this quarterback multiple times. I think that's how Iowa can get a victory in this game. It's not going to be a given, though. It's definitely a benefit that this game is at Kinnick that day, turning to night type of time slot. This is going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be interesting. Iowa, I see openings against Illinois' defense as well. They got to have an eye on number 4. Iowa, the game plan is very simple for Brian Ferentz. Find out where Johnny Newton is and triple team him, right? Because if you can take Johnny Newton out of this game, I think Illinois has showed that they can allow some points and yards.
Do they get it done in your mind, or are they winning on Saturday, Ted, or are we sweating this out next week in Lincoln here in Eastern Iowa?
Right now I say Iowa wins. My pick earlier in the week was 20-13 in favor of the Hawkeyes. I just think this is a different animal for Iowa as compared to Minnesota and Indiana the last 2 weeks for Illinois.
All right, Ted, bowl eligibility on the line in Madison, Wisconsin, and Nebraska, both teams with plenty of issues. NBC with another dandy of a game in their primetime slot. I picked Wisconsin to win this game. I don't know if that's the case. They've looked really, really bad at times. Nebraska has, I think, looked even worse, especially with their quarterbacks just turning the ball over left and right. How do you see that one playing out?
Oh, it's going to be fun. It's Big Ten West football. This is the ultimate bowl game bowl right now. And here's what I look at when I look at this Nebraska and Wisconsin matchup. Look at what these teams have next week. Nebraska has Iowa, I should say. That is certainly not a guarantee. Even though it's in Lincoln, certainly not a guarantee. You look at this thing from Wisconsin's perspective. They got to go on the road to Minneapolis to play Minnesota. Minnesota's kind of been a roller coaster. So has Wisconsin. I don't think that's a guarantee either. If Minnesota plays a solid game, if Minnesota plays their best game, they could possibly beat Wisconsin. So if either of these two coaches want to get to bowl eligibility, now is the time. That's what makes this game so intriguing, and that's what makes this game so fun. You've got two head coaches in Matt Rule and Luke Fickell that have said many times, we're a developmental program, right? We want to develop kids. Maybe we won't recruit those 5 stars, but we want to be big into developing. Getting to that bowl game is so huge for developing some of these younger players, especially in the age of opt-outs. Okay, if they can get those extra weeks of bowl practice, that's going to help Luke Fickell and Matt Rule out a lot, especially Matt Rule, right? He's got a lot of young players that have hit the field because of injuries. But when I look at this game, man, it's Nebraska, you got to hold on to the football. You got to duct tape the ball to your hands, whatever you got to do. And that quarterback situation, man, that's tough. That's tough. You got a future Big Ten program in UCLA that's kind of going through the same thing. Like, it seems like no matter who they trot out there at quarterback, it's a tough situation. Like, it doesn't look like Harburg is going to be good to go. So now you're down to Jeff Sims and Chubba Purdy. To me, I think I put the ball into the hands of Chubba Purdy. Look, I know he's not the greatest, but you got to run the ball right at Wisconsin. I think Nebraska can do some things, possibly pushing at the line of scrimmage against the Badgers. Emmett Johnson, the redshirt freshman from Minneapolis, he's the guy that they need to roll with in this game. And if they can get that run game going, keep the ball out of the hands of Tanner Mordecai, put more pressure on Wisconsin by giving them less possessions, Nebraska could possibly get the win. But I think a lot of stuff can happen in this game. I think we could maybe see some points. We could see a defensive struggle. We could see turnovers. There's so many things that we could see. But, until Nebraska proves to me that they can protect the football, I think I'm taking Wisconsin.
Another game that has bowl eligibility on the line, especially for one of the teams, is Northwestern. And I know you've been championing removing the tag for David Braun, and that finally happened this week. I think the right move, and I'm sure you agree too. Do the Cats get to 6 wins this weekend against Purdue? I think they do.
I try to stay fairly neutral on this channel, but I'm all about the Purple Cats right now. What a story this has become with Northwestern here right now. They made the right move, hiring David Braun and keeping he has clearly lit something within this team. He's clearly brought something out of this team right now, and it's fantastic to really see what's happening at Northwestern. In terms of this game against Purdue, boy, this is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to this. Purdue's coming off a really good offensive performance against Minnesota last week, and I think they can have similar success. The key is going to be protecting Hudson Card. Hudson Card has been running for his life all season long, but when he has time to throw, good things can happen for the Purdue Boilermakers. And then I look on the other side for Northwestern. Getting Ben Bryant back was big. Even though Brendan Sullivan played some good football, I think Ben Bryant is definitely the better of the two quarterbacks right now. Watch out for Joseph Hyman. Hyman's one of those kids that at running back, they get the ball in his hands and he can burst off a big play. This one's going to come down, I think, to whoever protects their quarterback the best, especially on the Purdue side. If they can get good pass protection against Northwestern, remember this Wildcats team got 6 sacks against Maryland. If they can protect their quarterback, I think Purdue can move the ball. Maybe Devin Mockabee can have back-to-back really good games for the Boilermakers. But I think this is the best opportunity for Northwestern to get to bowl eligibility. They got Illinois next week. I think Illinois is playing some pretty good football right now, but this is a prime opportunity for the Cats to get to bowl eligibility. And when you talk, I just talked about getting those extra weeks of bowl practice. Boy, Northwestern could really benefit from that as well.
All right, Ted, rapid fire for the last two. Ohio State, sizable favorite over Minnesota. And then you've got 2 7-loss teams meeting in Bloomington, the Hoosiers and the Spartans. Give me a thought on each.
Yeah, for let's talk about the old brass spittoon first. Boy, Indiana and Michigan State. And I like crazy Tommy Allen really coming out in this one and really pulling out all the stops to make this thing work. This team could have quit earlier this season the way things were going for Indiana, but Brendan Sorsby has been better. And then you look at what's happening over there at Michigan State. Michigan State might have a little bit more talent. That defense it's probably, right, if you count this season as the Mel Tucker era, this is probably the best defense that they've had throughout the Mel Tucker era, so you've got that going for you. Remember, last year's game was absolutely nuts and crazy, where Michigan State outgained Indiana by something like 150 or 200 yards. Yet the Hoosiers found a way to win. You had missed blocked extra points. It was just a crazy game. Would not surprise me to see that happen once again this week. Ohio State, you got to get in, get out, and get on with your life against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Stay healthy, but come out strong. You don't want to be looking ahead too much. Right, this is a Minnesota team that they should be able to handle, but Ohio State, take care of business. You don't worry about hitting the over, right, in this game. Take care of business, run the ball, get out of town with a victory.
Ted, thanks as always. We'll talk to you on the short week next week, okay?
All right, beautiful.
Big Ten.
All right, that's our segment. That's our segment for the week. Hope everybody enjoyed that. I'm going to get caught up here on some comments. So let me scroll to the top here. First of all, the one that's on the screen, I wanted to make sure I kept it up on the screen, and I didn't want to skip over it because it is a super chat there. Thanks to our guy Big Ten Ted, Champions Club member. If you want to be a member of this channel, get some extra perks, hit that join button below. I'm sick of the Big Ten. Sick of it. He's sick of it. Making the headlines for all the wrong reasons. This one is going to get worse before it gets better, I'm afraid. I agree with that. I agree with that. I'm very curious to see what the College Football Playoff Committee is going to do. Are they going to collaborate with the NCAA? I thought it was a little bit crazy. People saying you got to keep them out of the playoff. Got to keep them out of the playoff. I honestly don't know. I'm trying to weigh all of these things in my mind. Things change so much on the fly. What your opinion was 2 weeks ago will not be your opinion 2 weeks from now. So it's very hard to adjust to these things on the fly. I'll admit I was a little bit skeptical when all of these things kind of came out. I was skeptical that was Connor Stallions in the Central Michigan sidelines. You can kind of go down from there. But it appears everybody talks about due process. I think the Big Ten has done their due process right now with the University of Michigan, right? The NCAA was sharing information with them and they got the suspension. Look, Tony Petitti is the commissioner not just of Michigan, but of 14 schools. Next year it's going to be 18. He's got to serve these university presidents as best that he can. All right, let's move on to some more comments here because I know I got to some Puff EJ. Iowa's punter could win the Big Ten championship. Tory Taylor, boy, I tell you what, folks, we're getting to the time of year where we're getting to some lasts. This is it. Tory Taylor's last game at Kinnick Stadium. What a run. What a run it has been. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Probably the best punter I've seen in my day. He's probably the best punter I've seen around here. All right, let's get to Dallas. Big Ten TED Champions Club member. As a member of the Big Ten TED Champions Club, you get your comments featured here. All right, Ted, the excitement I feel for the soon-to-be jump to the Big Ten for USC, Dallas, the Trojan fan, has me excited for the coming matchups, but also establishing our president in the trophy games. Any ideas for matchup names? I want these things to happen organically, right? That's what I want to start with. But there's one obvious one out there. It's the Michigan State game. Spartans versus Trojans. The spear of Troy, maybe of a sword or a big spear or something. That's the obvious one that really sits out there. But I just don't want it to have a trophy just to have a trophy. Right? I think some of these new games, there was a trophy established, right? I think Nebraska and Wisconsin played for the Freedom Trophy. I know there's some military tribute in there, which is always great. But some of these trophies are just made, and there's not much of a story behind them, especially the new ones. So if I just want it to mean something. Will USC and Michigan State be a competitive rivalry? If it is, I'm all for it. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's get to some more comments here. Got Keith Chambers says trying to take it easy on Iowa. They got enough going on. Iowa's hitting their stride at the right time. Okay, this offense is getting it together. I think Deacon Hill's played a little bit better football here right now. All right. Got our guy Casey, resident Hawkeye. One of our resident Hawkeye fans in the house. Jared Jones kind of backing him up right there. Let's check out this comment from Black Cat. Michigan are not victims from the Big Ten. They are doing their best to prevent the inevitability of one of their teams forfeiting a title if they make it. I agree with you. I'm done with this Michigan versus everybody. I'm done with this America's team. I don't feel sorry for them. Right? The more that comes out about the Michigan Wolverines right now, the more we really find out just what's going on. This is not adversity. This is you violating the rules that were set up. And to me, that's not necessarily adversity. But at least that's the way I see it. During my segment, 6 interceptions. I think she's talking about that Iowa 6 interceptions. Holy cow. And I think that was a Friday night game. Wow. Yeah, I remember that one. I think I did a preview for that one. I said, this could be something. But it wasn't. All right, let's get to more from Jared. Honestly, I hope the Big Ten does nothing further to Michigan. And it doesn't sound like they are. If the Michigan statement is to be believed, then nothing will happen and they've closed their investigation. But the Big Ten said in their statement that they're working with the NCAA. This isn't a good thing for the league. We need a strong Michigan program, as hard as it is to say. That takes a lot. Look at the logo next to Jared's name. That says a lot. Saying that. It adds to the value of the conference. No question about it. Right? If this thing really hits rock bottom and it hits its worst point, I think what you're going to see is Michigan take a little bit of a dip, especially with the Oregons, the USCs, the Washingtons, the good teams coming into the league. I think you're going to see Michigan maybe take a little bit of a dip, and then we'll see if they can kind of come back out of it. a little bit. Erica Goldger, resident Hawkeye fan. Sorry, one of our resident Hawkeye fans. Thank you for the $5 super chat. If you want to leave a donation to help support the channel, hit the $ and attach a comment to it, like Jared and Erica have done here. In Phil and LeVar, we trust. It'll be fun. As long as you got defense and special teams in Iowa City, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. These last 2 years, yeah, if you had a better offense, if you had a Nate Stanley 2019 type of offense, yeah, maybe they would have been 11-1. Maybe they'd be in a playoff type of conversation, but that's not it. Kirk Ferentz, Coach of the Year. That's been kind of brought up. David Braun, Greg Schiano, Kirk Ferentz are some guys to be talked about for Coach of the Year. What Kirk has been able to do with this team is spectacular, and I know I mentioned on this channel, and other people have mentioned, Kirk, time to ride off in the sunset. And that's why this season is so difficult, because he's doing things on offense. They're doing things on offense. You're conflicted right now. We'll see if Kirk stays after this year, but he's doing a great job with this Iowa Hawkeyes team. There is absolutely no doubt about that. P. Maximus chiming in. Iowa wins. Nebraska is on a downward spiral. There's a way, and I did this in my head, I didn't write it down, but there's a way for a lot of teams in the Big Ten West to get to 6-6. I think it was an Illinois loss and then a win. It was a Northwestern win against Purdue and a loss to Illinois. It would have been a Iowa win against Illinois, but the loss to Nebraska, and then Wisconsin beats Nebraska, and then Minnesota beats Wisconsin. There's a whole lot. But yeah, you could have 5 or 6 teams, every team except Purdue. Let me look at the flag behind me. Yeah, every team except Purdue could still make a bowl game if you split a lot of these games down the stretch. I have a feeling Iowa's going to win both of them. I think the Hawkeyes are playing their best football right now, but with the loss of Cooper DeJean, I reserve the right to kind of change my mind. More comments here. Erica chiming in. From an Iowa fan, I could consider your point here where you're coming from. Neither team should win the Wisconsin-Nebraska game. And it might be a game like that, where they turn the football over and they miss field goals and they throw inaccurate passes and they do all of that. It's like, well, someone's got to win this game. Who, like Maryland and Nebraska, for example. I could see a scenario where it plays out like that. Tanner Mordecai, Talia Tagovailoa. Maybe Talia is a little bit better, but maybe a little bit comparable is there. So maybe there's a blueprint to kind of another 13-10. Nobody wants to win this type of game, type of matchup between Iowa and between Nebraska and Wisconsin. More comments about the Big Ten West. Folks, enjoy it while it's here. Enjoy it while it is still here. Because we're going to have a ceremony for this flag. We're going to have a funeral for this flag. This flag has been with me it'll be 2 years by the time we retire it. And then I got to find something else here to put in the background. But the Big Ten West, has it been ugly? Yeah. Has it been defense? Yeah. It's not the better of the two divisions. We all know that. But it's been fun football this season. In my opinion, has been fun to watch because of all of it. And I think these last 2 weeks are going to be really fun to watch. You got to appreciate some of the positives in college football. You got to appreciate the Northwestern. I wish more people would talk about this Northwestern situation. Everybody, including me, was kind of crapping on them, to put it bluntly, at the beginning of the season, and saying they'd win 1 game, they win 2 games. I picked them to go 2-10, wins over Howard and UTEP, but what a story that is, right? First of all, David Braun keeping players in Evanston when they could have transferred, and then the success that they've had has been tremendous. So all the props kind of go to David Braun and that staff. It makes me feel good. I spent some time covering the North Dakota State Bison, my first job out of college, at the local Fox station there. I did not cross paths with David Braun at that point. Did with Chris Kleiman, but not David Braun at that point. But it's good to see some fellow Bison get out there and do some great things in the world. It's amazing. Jeff Sims, Erica talks about Jeff Sims, the turnover machine. Boy, you look at Jeff Sims on tape at Georgia Tech. Yes, there were turnovers and there were interceptions, double-digit interceptions. but I didn't think this would happen. I thought Jeff Sims had some talent. Yeah, you lose some of your guys to injuries as some of your skill players, the Marcus Washingtons, the Isaiah Garcia Castanedas, the Gabe Irvins, the Ramir Johnsons, guys like that. But man, like what he just can't hold on to the ball. Big question for Nebraska fans. What are you going to do next year? What are you going to do at quarterback? Can you trot out Harburg? You can't trot out Purdy. You can't trot out Sims. I think they got to go into the portal, right? You got a 4-star quarterback coming in, local school out of the Omaha suburbs, Bellevue West, and Daniel Kalin, right? He's bringing a couple of his teammates with him to UNL. They need to get a guy in the transfer portal and you got to make sure you get it right this time. You got to find a guy that can hold on to the football. That's requirement number 1 for a Nebraska quarterback going forward. Man, let's chime in with Tony. Tony, a resident Gopher fan. PJ's job is safe. I talked to some buddies. For those of you that don't know, I live in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, so a lot of people I work with on a day-to-day basis, we talk some Gophers back and forth. And I was talking to one of the Gopher fans that I work with, and I was saying, like, what's the deal with PJ? If he loses the rest of the way, what's going to happen with PJ Fleck? Could he get fired if they go 5-7? And there's, I don't know. And I kind of chime back, I don't think so, but I think looking towards next season, he's got to flip this thing. He's got to get some success. You look at their schedule, it's going to be tough. Minnesota, I'm looking at you, Star Tribune, right? People that cover the Gophers. You need to understand what this program is. Okay? Look, I understand Jerry Keel got it going and then PJ Fleck getting 9 wins, undefeated in bowl games. That's great. 11 wins in 2019. But this is not a 9-11 win program. I just don't see it that way. I see this as a program that can win maybe between 6 and 8 to 9 games a year, and then they can jump up to that 10-win level. Especially now with portal and NIL type of stuff. And PJ Fleck has voiced his concerns about the NIL. I believe it's Dinkytown Athletes. Is that their official NIL collective? I don't know if that's unofficial or if they have an official one. But man, you got to understand your expectations, I think, if you're a Gopher fan, especially going forward. Right now Oregon is 6th in the country in recruiting for 2024 and 2nd in the Big Ten. Oregon is a team, and they are built like a Big Ten team. Dan Lanning has done a phenomenal job over there as well. Indiana. Erica's got the Hoosiers over Michigan State. One of those teams got to get a win. Tom Allen, you get to 4 wins, I think he stays in town. They finish 3-9. They lose to Michigan State. They lose to Purdue. There might be a discussion at the end of the year, but maybe Tom Allen has done enough to keep his job in Bloomington, Indiana. Well, so we're talking about rivalries. Here's Tekken. Corn versus Coast. Iowa and Nebraska, USC, and UCLA. That's interesting. I know Nebraska and UCLA had some series of game back and forth. I think they might have played in the 90s at some time, 2000s. USC and Nebraska, I think, played in the late 2000s. I think that was a college game day game at Nebraska as well. Looking forward to some of these matchups as well that are going to develop throughout the year. Check it out, chiming in. This is not Big Ten related, but I am going to comment on it. What are your thoughts about Big 12 WWE partnership for the championship, their Big 12 championship game coming up, with the most outstanding player to receive a title belt? Okay, so the title belt is becoming a popular thing. The LA Bowl, which is now like sponsored by Rob Gronkowski, apparently, they're instead of having a championship trophy, they have a title belt. So what have we seen from the Big 12? Here's what I will say about the Big 12, and I'm going to try to spin it back to the Big 10. The Big 12 is now in a position where their best brands in the conference are, it's just off the top of my head, this is football-wise, football, not basketball. Utah, Colorado, Kansas State, maybe. I'd have to pull up a full list of the teams right now, but they don't have a lot of big, attractive brands where no matter what the record is, people are going to watch. Colorado with Deion is one of those, especially as of recently, that's coming into the league. The Big 12 has to find a way to generate interest. I think this is a partnership that can work. this is something maybe for fans that are fans of the WWE can draw interest into this Big 12 championship game. I know a lot of people have said some funny stuff about, oh, they're going to put Jerry World inside of a cage. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. But, you got the Big 12. I think they were playing some, was it basketball games in Mexico City? I think they had some Rucker Park stuff. I'll give credit to Brett Yormark. He's getting creative in trying to draw attention to his conference because he knows the brands that he's losing in Texas and Oklahoma. And he doesn't have a huge draw to maybe the casual sports viewer. Like, look at the Big Ten: Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, USC. People will notice those brands. They know who they are. Look at the SEC. That speaks for itself. The Big 12 doesn't really have a lot of noticeable, recognizable brands, so they got to do what some people might consider gimmicky stuff to get that attention so they can try to compete with some of the Big Ten and the SEC. I believe the structure of college sports starting in 2024 is going to be a power 2, a mid 2. I don't mean that in the Gen Z type of way, but the power 2, the mid 2, and the group of 5. Honestly, I think the ACC and the Big 12 are going to kind of be in the middle somewhere, and I think you're going to see the Big 10 and the SEC really separate themselves financially, resources on the field, that sort of thing. But thank you for the question. I know that's something that's not been something I've been pondering and considering where my channel is with the Big Ten. But I've thought about doing a national show of some kind because I pay attention to the SEC, the Big 12. I pay attention to all the other stuff. I've thrown around the idea of maybe doing an audio podcast or something else that's maybe covers college football more nationally. But there's so many people that do that, so we'll see what happens. But South Bend Hawkeye chiming in: Iowa and Oregon in the Sugar Bowl after Iowa knocks off Ohio State. He's calling it shot, the South Bend Hawkeye right now over there. Boy, wouldn't that be something if Iowa puts the clamps on the Big Ten East champion over there. Got a score prediction here from Marcus Aurelius Maximus: Michigan 49, Maryland 6. That would not surprise me over there. More from Tony. Greg Schiano at Rutgers has done a wonderful job. Now, somebody brought this up to me before, and now I have the ability. I just installed this. I do have the ability to screen share, which is what I'm going to do right now. So just give me a moment. I'm gonna pull up Rutgers' schedule. There were some folks out there that were saying Rutgers hasn't faced the most competition in the world. So I'm going to pull this up right now. Let's see if this works. Oh boy, I think I got it to work. There's Rutgers' schedule right here. So let's kind of glance over it. You get a win against Northwestern. Okay, that's turning out to be a solid win right now. They beat Temple. They beat Virginia Tech. They beat Wagner. Wins over Michigan State and Indiana, which are at the bottom of the Big Ten right now. So some people have said that maybe they don't have a big marquee win. But, look at what we're talking about right now. This is a bowl eligibility type of team. I don't think that type of team is going to get a big marquee win, so to speak, over anybody. But, so I think Rutgers has done a fine job so far this season. I think that Wisconsin game maybe comes back to bite them. That's a game that they maybe could have played a little bit better in. But when I look at the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, I think where I see the struggles with Rutgers is on offense. They got Gavin Wimsatt, I think he's improved over last season when they kind of played musical chairs at the quarterback position, but they need to figure things out on offense. We know that they can run the ball. Throwing the ball is where they really come up short throughout this whole thing. But yeah, does Rutgers have the Rutgers' best win is probably against Northwestern to open up the season. But when you look at a 6-win team, I don't think you expect them to have a big marquee win of sorts. Like, you look at the losses this season, Michigan, you look at Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Iowa. Those are solid teams. Wisconsin is probably the one that probably could have went either way. But, I think you got to give credit for what Rutgers has done, especially what they were at the beginning, kind of coming off Chris Ash when they were winning 2 to 3 games a year, things like that. So I just wanted to quickly bring that up over there. All right, let's get into some more comments. Thanks, everybody, for being a part of the show here tonight. JJ is going to throw for over 250 yards, this according to Marcus. We'll see. I don't think they need to. And I don't think Michigan needs to really go into this game and do a ton. Right? I mentioned in my segment with Spencer, Ohio State got to get in, get out, get on with your life. I see the same with Michigan. Although I could see Maryland pushing back more on Michigan than Minnesota to Ohio State. Our guy Hummus Hero here is in the chat tonight. One of our resident Buckeye fans. And Hummus Hero also hitting home the point. This season goes by so fast, man. I'll admit, it's been a rough year covering the Big Ten Conference on this channel. Don't get me wrong, I love doing it, but it has been a rough year with Northwestern, Mel Tucker at Michigan State, and then this Michigan thing. I feel like I've barely covered football, and if there's one thing that I've really learned from this season is I really do love covering football, and I hate covering everything else. Like, that's the thing. But the thing is, you got to talk about these things. You got to bring them up. They're in the news. I understand that, and I get that. But it's so hard to keep up with. Like, my job keeps me very, very busy. It's a minor miracle how I've been able to keep up with this Michigan story. Do other people cover it better? Yeah, probably. But, it's just the way it is. I like football. That's what I like. It's what I've grown up like. It's just, it's been a rough year. It's been a rough year. It's been a very fun year, but I don't know if it's been as fun as other years on this channel where it's been more football focused. Because you had Northwestern that kind of bled into the beginning of the season, and then Michigan State happened, and then this Michigan thing. It's just, this whole year has been riddled by scandal. And it seems to have gone so fast, maybe because all of the attention has been on other things other than football. And maybe I and others haven't had time to appreciate some of the football on the field. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about that. Sonny Verma checking in from the Illini cast. If Illinois wins tomorrow, the last weekend of the season, it's going to be bonkers. And I kind of want it to happen. Even though I think Iowa's going to win the game, and Iowa's probably the best team in the Big Ten West, but teams like Illinois, Nebraska, Wisconsin, all those teams, they have a shot to get to Indy, and they have a shot to go 5-7 and miss out on a bowl game. This is why we love it. You're going to miss it. I'm going to love having Oregon. I'm going to love having a USC. I'm going to love having a little bit of boost on the offensive side of the football. But that Big Ten West. And you're still going to have it, just not as much. Like, I was reading some tweets about, hey, Iowa and Illinois are only going to meet up 2 or 3 times in 5 years. And it's been a fun series the last year or two. So, yeah, it's just what's going to happen. It's the ever-changing, it's the evolution of college football as we continue to go forward. All right, let's get into some more comments. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in here tonight. We got some excited for tomorrow. I could bring up the schedule for tomorrow's Big Ten football games, the schedule. I also tweeted out my TV viewing schedule. I should have done that earlier in the season. I can only handle 2 games at a time. I do have YouTube TV. I do have the multi-view feature. I tried it. I can't take in 4 games at a time. My brain cannot decipher that. So I got what I call the B1G, the big screen and the bigger screen, so to speak. So 4 games in the noon slot in the Big Ten Conference this week. Jared Jones chimes in. Any news on Iowa? Looking forward to their offensive coordinator? No. If I know anything about Kirk Ferentz, and I see some Hawkeyes in the chat, if I know anything about Kirk Ferentz, I think he's going to pump the brakes, wait until the season's over, give his son, right, the ability to kind of finish off this season. And he said it in his conference that and that's why this Brian Ferentz thing in the middle of the year kind of surprised him so much. He's a very after the season type of guy. Let's make these decisions. Let's evaluate after the year is over. So I think that's what's going to happen. That's going to be a story that we're going to be following on this channel. Of course, head coaching, right? But Michigan, this whole sign stealing thing is dominating the conversation. But Michigan State, who's going to be their head coach? Northwestern filled their vacancy. Is Indiana going to make a move? What else is going to happen down the road? I think it's going to be something to really keep an eye on down the road. Here's Tony bringing up an interesting point about Minnesota Golden Gopher football. Gophers need to find a quarterback in the portal. The Greek squirt gun is killing us. Interesting. Oh boy. Athan. I don't think Athan is a terrible quarterback. But he's not a good quarterback. Is he average? I see what you're saying. But what I've heard is some on these broadcasts and these broadcasters kind of talking about all these players or talking about the relationship between PJ and Ethan Kaliakmanis. Man, I think those two are tied. They just seem really tight. It just seems what I've heard from these broadcasters. It seems like PJ wants to. He invested into Ethan to be their next quarterback. I might be wrong, and Tony, you might be right. They might go to the portal. I don't know if they are. That's just my gut feeling right now. I'll try to gather more information and intel as this thing kind of transpires and as this thing kind of goes forward, but that's just my feeling right now. And we'll kind of go over who needs a transfer quarterback and all that. But if it were me, if I shaved my head and if I said row the boat, and if I were PJ Fleck, I'd bring in a transfer. If at the very least to compete with Ethan Kaliakmanis and make him better. That's what I would do in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's what I would do. But I'm not a football coach. Yeah, Erica chiming in here with something as well. I got a lot of friends. I got a lot of people that cover Big 12 football. And here's what I'll say about the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is going to be that conference where anybody can win any given week. And you've even seen a little bit of that, this season. But now without the powers of Texas and Oklahoma in the conference, like let's take out brands for a minute and let's look at teams just on the football field. Where are they going to sit? Like, who are some of the best teams in the Big 12 right now? Oklahoma State. All right, if you take out Texas and OU, for example, who are, as a record-wise, Oklahoma State is 7-3, Iowa State is 6-4, Kansas State is 7-3, West Virginia. It's just, you look at these teams historically. Right, you look at a Oklahoma State and an Iowa State, you look at these teams historically, they're playing in the same conference as maybe some of these powers, so that can maybe help them out a little bit in recruiting. Now they don't have that. All they have is each other. Are they going to rely on playing Colorado? Hey, come to our school and you get to play against Dion. Like, what's it going to be? I don't know. I think this is going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Look, and I think the Big 12 is going to be fun. I want to see the Big 12 be successful. But I look around and recruiting-wise, they don't really have any powers. Like, who is the team that you look at in the Big 12 and says, yeah, they can recruit? That's the best recruiting team. Probably Colorado with Dion. That's probably that's kind of what Erica mentioned here. That's probably what they're hitching their wagon to right now, to be brutally honest with you. So we'll see. Hopefully Dion stays there. I know he's been rumored at Texas A&M. I don't think that's going to happen. I know Dan Lanning was mentioned before. There was no way Dan Lanning was going to Texas A&M. Oregon, I believe, is a better job than A&M. I think A&M is a very overrated job. I think there's some people out there that saying, this is a great job. I heard Josh Pate say, this is a tier 1 job. Look, I know they got money. I know they got oil barons. I know they got people doing all that. You can't tell me A&M's a better job than Oregon. You can't tell me that. What has A&M done on the field other than a Johnny Manziel season in the past 20 some odd years? That's just the way I feel about it. All right, let's get to some more comments here. Paul Wall. Running into the Paul Wall. Penn State wins big tomorrow at noon over Rutgers. I do not disagree with that necessarily. I believe the Nittany Lions going to get back on track. They play Michigan State to end the season. It's a 10-2. Is Penn State forever 10-2? Said at the beginning of the year, Penn State could be the team of 2024. They need to figure some things out. Look, Drew Aller is good when he's on schedule. He's great. When you get a little bit of pressure on him and you get in his face a little bit, he turns into a different quarterback. They need to get these running backs getting back to where they were last year. Like, this is the definition of a sophomore slump, what Katron Allen and Nick Singleton have really gone through. Doug Shepard stated the obvious here. Too many scandals this season, right? You know, you see one of these a year, two even would be some, but yeah, to have three of these, Northwestern, Michigan State, and Michigan, that's tough. That's tough. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year here in Big Ten land. I'll say that. But hopefully we can finish this thing off. Let's go out and win a national championship. If the Big Ten doesn't win a national title, let's get Oregon, let's get Washington, let's get a future member a national title. All right. Dallas chiming in. More USC talk. Looking forward to SC versus Northwestern next year. Certainly a better trip to Chicago than this year for the meltdown at South Bend. You better bring your energy drink. It gets a little sleepy sometimes in Evanston. With all due respect here to the Wildcats. But I'm looking forward to some of these matchups. I'm looking forward to a lot of these West Coast teams coming in. How about USC and UCLA this weekend? I've said it where, hey, you combine USC's offense with UCLA's defense, that's a pretty darn good football team. But the Bruins and the Trojans, whoever wins that game, are maybe going to win in spite of their other unit, UCLA, its offense, USC, its defense. I don't think it's going to look as pretty and as beautiful and as scoring and as efficient as last year's great USC and UCLA games. Here's a comment from Janet. Harbaugh will have missed 6 games. The big final analysis is that Harbaugh knew nothing. If you don't like it, tough. If the NCAA finds more stuff, we'll take our lumps and move on. That kind of begs the question. I mentioned this in some of my other commentaries, and I would love everybody's thoughts right now. Now that we're live commenting, I can kind of see it as it happens instead of an uploaded video. How much should the head coach know? And this kind of goes back to Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern as well. How much does the head coach know? Should the head coach know every little single detail about a football team? Should Pat Fitzgerald have known stuff that was going on after practice in the locker room? How much is the head coach responsible for? There have been scandals throughout college football history. A lot of times coaches, well, we didn't know. I didn't know. And they try to maybe save their butt that way. But a lot of times it doesn't work. And I think there has been a precedent set over time that the head coach is responsible. Maybe they don't have to know everything, but it's a buck stops here mentality where you should be held responsible. If the offense doesn't play well, the quarterback is held responsible. Right? If the defense doesn't play well at the NFL level, the head coach is held responsible. He's the guy that oversees the program. He's in charge of all aspects, positive and negative. If you go out there and you go undefeated 15-0, you win a national title, you should be praised. You should get a contract extension. You should get a raise. If bad things happen within your program, on the field, off the field, I think maybe you deserve some punishment. The buck stops here mentality, responsible. Maybe a coach shouldn't know everything, every little bitty detail that's going on inside a football program, but maybe they should be held responsible. And some people might think, well, that's kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of the way it works. Hummus Hero, you and I are on the same page. It's tough. I can't remember what weekend it was, but yeah, I had the quad box. Actually, to be honest with you, I had 5 games going at once. On a smaller TV, like a 32-inch TV I had over to the left here, I had the quad box, YouTube TV quad box, and then on the bigger TV, I had 1 game. It's tough. I cannot. And then when I have to do these reaction videos and I have to really digest and kind of break down, it's very difficult to do that. If you're a casual viewer just sitting back, yeah, it's fine. But yeah, I just can't do that. 2 is enough. 2 is enough for me. 2 is enough for me. All right, let's get to some more comments here. South Bend Hawkeye talking about the offensive coordinator search. Kirk Ferentz was looking for another puppet to be his OC, according to the South Bend Hawkeye. That's why Paul Christ is being talked about. I've heard that. They're buds. I've certainly heard that. So that's interesting that you say that. I also threw out, there's a friend of the show, friend of the channel, Scary Alvarez. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. Now, David Braun has been hired permanently, but he suggested at Northwestern, and this could happen at Michigan State or whatever program. What about a combination of Paul Chryst and Jim Leonard? He mentioned Paul Chryst as a head coach, Leonard as a coordinator, but I could almost see that going the opposite way as well, because some schools might think Jim Leonard could be a head coach and then Paul Chryst a coordinator, right? But now, I mean, I don't think that would happen at Michigan State. Maybe it would, but that's a combination that's worked before in the Big Ten. Maybe it could work again. Maybe it could work again. All right, let's move on to some more stuff here. Thanks, everybody, for coming aboard here tonight. Looking forward. Remember, we've got one more Saturday, Rivalry Saturday. With some big rivalry games coming up here next week. Going back to that Big 12 discussion, here's Hummus Hero. Arizona seems to be a program of the rise if, and this is a big if they can keep Jedd Fisch. I could see them in Utah being two of the better teams. And when you talk about brands overall, Arizona provides a great basketball team as well. So yeah, if they can keep Jedd Fisch, there's been some scuttlebutt about Chip Kelly being fired. UCLA, be self-aware. Martin Jarman, the AD at UCLA, know who you are. Know who you are. Because Chip Kelly's done pretty good since COVID. An 8-4 regular season, a 9-3 regular season, and now they've gone 6-4. Maybe a little bit of a step back, but that's what happens when you lose a quarterback that's played a couple of years for you in DTR, right? And you lose Zach Charbonnet as well. You need time to kind of rebuild. You throw in a freshman quarterback, as talented as he is in Dante Moore, maybe it's not going to work out right away. So if UCLA fires Chip Kelly, I don't know, considering that program, and considering the lack of support that happens for football in Westwood, I don't know if you're going to find a better option. I know Jedd Fisch has some connections to UCLA. That could be. But that's the thing as a whole with firing head coaches. Like, you just don't want to fire someone to fire someone. Can you be in a better situation? Can you get out of this thing better than what you started it and where you're at right now? I don't know. I don't know about UCLA. I don't know. I know Chip hasn't really recruited that well, and I get that. And maybe you want someone that can recruit better, but, just be careful. Just be careful. But yeah, Arizona might be that program. Maybe they elevate a little bit. They've kind of been a program where they come up for a little bit, and then maybe they go down, and maybe they come up for a little bit. Maybe not consistent 8-win seasons or 9-win seasons, but who knows? I think in this Big 12 conference, you're going to see someone rise up. I think Utah, and we'll see what happens with Colorado, but I definitely think Utah is going to be up there. Who's going to rise up? I think that's a big question. There's a lot of opportunities for a lot of schools out there. Here's something. You talk about awkward. Tony Petitti handing the Big Ten championship trophy to Jimmy Harbaugh might be the most photographed moment in Big Ten history. That would be awkward, right? That would be very, very awkward. But it's something that could certainly happen. And like I said, I think Tony Petitti is donning his scarlet and gray. I think he has a rooting interest, even though obviously he's a partial figure. He has a rooting interest, I believe, going forward with Ohio State. I think it's best case scenario for the Big Ten. Maybe I should put it that way, for Ohio State to win the conference and then maybe have one of those other Pac-12 schools that are joining do pretty well in the CFP as well. All right, we got a couple more comments to get to, and then we'll call the night here. Gerald thinking that UCF could possibly get there. Yeah, UCF has been competitive in some of those games so far this season. You can throw out all kinds of stats about Iowa that you want. It seems like I've read them all. It seems like I'm read them all. Iowa, first nationally in yards per play and defense, but 131st on offense. And here's the thing about the Hawkeyes. They never needed a top 30, top 40 offense. They just need something that's like 70th or 80th. They just need something that's good enough, that's okay. It's amazing. If this team gets to 10-2 this season, considering where their defense is, like last year they went 7-5. If this year they go 10-2, considering the injuries that they've had, wow, that's quite the amazing performance here from the Iowa Hawkeyes. Quite the amazing performance that we've seen. All right. Let's see, Casey. Agree with your prediction. Iowa 20, Illinois 10. Is that what I had? I thought I had 20 to 13. I think I had 20 to 13. Either way, it's in the same ballpark. It's in the same ballpark. So yeah. All right, good stuff. Good stuff tonight, everybody. Wanted to come on live for my segment. Next week, there's going to be a segment as well with all of this, as we do each and every single week. Not sure. I got to touch base with Spencer what we're going to do here in the off season. I don't really cover basketball. I don't. Maybe I'll do it during tournament time, but I don't really cover basketball. I got a lot going on. Here in the winter, so appreciate that with the Buckeye fandom, and take the under. Maybe this is the week. Who knows? Illinois offense, they get it going this week. Maybe this is the 1 week where an Iowa game goes over, because despite those historically low over-unders, they've been hitting those unders. South Bend Hawkeye also chimed in. I forgot. I might watch this game because I cover high school football and our season is done. Anyone else saying up? We got Washington State and Colorado tonight. Because what are they, 4-6? Obviously, if they lose tonight, it's done, right? They get to 7 losses. Okay, I think David Braun. I want to say something. We talked about Northwestern. I think there's an argument that David Braun has done a better coaching job at Northwestern than Deion Sanders has at Colorado. Remember, Deion was hired back in the winter sometime, and he had time to flip over this roster. And then you look at David Braun, who just came to Evanston to be a defensive coordinator. And then July, not only did he not have time to flip over a roster, but he had to fight just to keep kids there. And I think Colorado is definitely a more talented team than Northwestern, yet the Wildcats are having a better. I think David Braun's done a better coaching job in that situation than Deion Sanders. Don't tell that to anybody at ESPN. Don't tell that to anybody at Fox. Nobody's going to say it. I'll say it. Because I believe it. I'm not saying if they met up on the field, would Colorado win? I think it could be competitive. I think Colorado's got more talent. Shadur and Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn and all these other players. They got a lot of speed. They're fast. But the trenches, who knows? Who knows what could happen? That would be a very interesting contest. But I will say the coaching job, I think David Braun has done a better coaching job. Because look at how high Colorado started and just how it's taken a dip, and Deion Sanders saying, we just need to bring in new offensive linemen. Look, I don't know if that's going to work at this level, at the Power 5 level, where all of a sudden if a player doesn't work, we'll just get new players and say it publicly and then do it. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work at Colorado. I don't think it's going to work anywhere. Because, look, I know that option is out there, but at some point you got to install some faith in your kids and say, I brought you in here. I believe in you. If as a coach you keep on saying that, where's the belief? I don't know. The more time that goes by, I'm not sold that Deion Sanders is going to be this great coach that everybody thought he was going to be throughout 4 games this season. Look at who he beat. They didn't beat much of anybody. And they lost to some not great teams either. So I'll get that off my chest when it comes to the Colorado Buffaloes. I want to thank everybody for coming in to the live show here tonight. I think that'll be it here for tonight's show. We've got some football tomorrow. I'll be doing some reaction videos of that as well. And then we go and we jump in to rivalry week. It should be a really fun week. Ohio State, Michigan, there's going to be a lot of attention. Let's just say that. There's going to be a lot of attention being brought to that game between the Buckeyes and the Wolverines. There's going to be a lot on the line also in the Big Ten West. If you haven't already, hit subscribe for Big Ten content all season long. And until next time, I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.